that's enough 6-string for the rest of my life. That's right, we're talking about Thundercat. I first heard his work 10 years ago with his Apocalypse album. Thundercat is one of the most popular bassists on the planet, and possibly elsewhere. So what's his secret? He doesn't just play like normal bassists do. He does things a little bit differently. And I think I figured out the recipe for his secret bass sauce. Whether you're just a fan of Thundercat or you're looking to improve your bass game, here are 7 reasons why Thundercat is crushing bass like no one else, including tips on how you can use his secret sauce to add some thunder to your cat. I don't know what that means. Thundercat. Ho! Spot the difference. Can you see what Thundercat isn't doing here that other popular bassists are? What about here? Or here? You got it, he has a slap bass allergy. Slap makes the sound of the bass pop out to your ear, which helps the average person notice that the bass player is even there. So it's a good way to make your bass lines stand out more. But Thundercat doesn't really slap, and he's one of the most popular bassists alive. So why doesn't he slap? Well, it turns out that when Thundercat first got his powers, he was forbidden to slap by the drum wizard, Chris Dave.
I remember Chris Dave told me when I was like, if you ever slap bass, he's like, I'm throwing my snare drum at you, like forbade me from slapping bass.
So like many other bassists, he's been forced to slap in the shadows, only sneaking out on one song. Plus this insane Instagram post.
Let me slap just once. I promise we won't have to talk no more.
Although apparently he was able to fly under Chris Dave's radar when he was slapping with suicidal tendencies before his solo career. Now, as you know if you've watched my videos at all, I love me some slap. But here's why I think it's cool that Thundercat got so big without slapping. Because as much as we bassists love to slap, it's rarely used out in the wild playing regular bass on other people's songs. I've heard from tons of students who think that they have to learn slap to be a well-rounded bassist. But if you listen beyond the handful of bands that have a lot of slap bass, you'll realize that most music doesn't involve slapping. If you're not obsessed with the style, it's really not necessary to learn slap to be a solid bassist. And Thundercat shows us it's not even necessary to be a bass virtuoso. So how does he blow our minds if he's not slapping? Where most bassists pluck lovely single notes one at a time to support the song, Thundercat goes a different direction. He plays all the notes at once using bass chords. Bassists don't normally use chords that much in real songs. We leave that to the guitarists and the bungee jumpers. Bass chords fill up a lot of sonic space, which can lead to muddiness, like low, rumbly sounds that clash with each other and with the other instruments. But somehow, Thundercat makes bass chords sound amazing. His lush chords fill the space of a normal bassist and a guitarist with powers combined, while somehow leaving room for all the synths to do their sparkly magic on top. So how does he do that? Thundercat has 3 hacks that make bass chords work. Yes, I just said hacks in a YouTube video, bear with me. First, most bassists have to fit their bass lines around pre-existing vocals, guitars, etc. But because Thundercat is the lead singer and songwriter, he gets to design the song around the bass chords. I mean, let's say you were writing a bass line for this existing song. There's already a really full arrangement of drums, guitars, synths, so doing a big Thundercat chord explosion just wouldn't work. It might sound cool in a YouTube video, but ultimately it's way too much to serve the song. Second, most bass players use a 4-string, which limits how many notes you can reach in one hand position and can lead to muddiness. So you usually end up playing only like 2 or maybe 3 notes at a time to avoid the mud. But for Thundercat, chords with 4 notes work because he can reach more notes using his signature 6-string. Take the Tron song, which yes is a song written for his cat, whose name is Turbotron over 9000 Baby Jesus Sally Uzi Clip. I just felt like we should all know that. If you only have 4 strings, you have to play those chords like this. Which sounds okay, but with an extra high string, you can avoid the mud and space the notes out more, which sounds more clear and melodic and guitar-like. third, he's got a live trick to really get the chords to pop out of the mud using an added octave up effect. This takes all the notes of the chord, which might normally sound like this, and duplicates them up an octave like this. This brings the bass into the register of a guitar, which makes it easier for the listener to pick out what he's actually doing. Okay, seriously, I'm done playing 6-string. Using all these hacks, he's able to pull off not just clean bass chords, but way fatter bass chords with more notes than the average bassist. Learning to play chords as fluently as Thundercat takes a ton of practice. I've got a video on super beginner chords you can start with in the description.
Horrendous.
And if you want to nerd out super deep, I also made you a PDF with some of Thundercat's most used chord shapes that you can start wrapping your fingers around to create cool progressions of your own. Most bassists are focused on laying down a simple, solid groove that allows the rest of the band to shine. You know that old saying, less is more? And then there's Thundercat. Like, what is even happening right now? Thundercat can definitely do the less is more thing, and we'll talk about that more later, but the reason we know and love this dude is that he's primarily a more is more type of bassist. Following in the steps of influences like Jaco Pastorius and Stanley Clarke, this kind of speedy shredding playing gives the bass a strong melodic voice in the band, versus just playing the typical support role us bassists usually do. And it also adds crazy, mind-blowing OMG vibes that you don't get from simple chugging. Take his tune, Friend Zone. For most of the song, he lays down super cool but relatively simple bass lines.
The next time you call me, I'm gonna sit and stare at the screen.
Most bassists would just keep it there, but then he goes totally nuts. And this is the part where I tell you how you can easily play as fast as Thundercat in just 5 minutes using this must-do exercise. Except not. It takes years of deliberate practice to play at this speed, and no amount of BassBuzz videos is gonna change that. Even if you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, which you should still do right now. But here are 3 tricks that'll get you closer. Step 1, relaxed, efficient technique. That means working on your flying, fretting fingers, using as little movement as possible to reach the notes you need. And I've got a video to help you with that in the description for when you're done here. Step 2, setting up your bass with low to medium action, meaning the strings aren't too far from the fingerboard, so you can make smaller, more efficient movements to press down the strings, and they're not as hard to pluck. And step 3, pluck near the bridge. The strings don't have as much give back there, so your plucking fingers don't have to work as hard, and it's easier to play fast. But there's more to Thundercat than just thunder chops. A lot of bassists who can shred kind of lose their ability to play simple. Like, it's just too tempting to go like this all the time and show off what they can do. Look at me, I'm on YouTube. But Thundercat isn't afraid to play simple, supportive bass. Bass that locks in the drum groove, gets your head bobbing, and supports the vocals without being too distracting. Take What's the Use, his most famous Mac Miller collab track. There were a few tasty shreds, but for the most part, Thundercat just repeats the riff verbatim over and over to support the vocals.
I just want another minute with it. Fuck a little, what's the use? Yeah.
If he wasn't able to adapt and play supportive, songs like this would get wrecked by impressive overplaying. Here's the part where I do my best impression of Thundercat-style shredding untastefully over this song. Just notice how it's totally overbearing, distracts you from the vocals, and would get me fired in a second. I'm able to find a voice with the instrument that allows me to blend in and also stand out. It's about communication, trying to understand what someone needs as compared to immediately trying to give them a lot. So how does he practically switch from shred mode to bed mode? And how can you cop that on bass or any other instrument? 3 steps. Step 1, obviously, is to play less notes. And the best way to do that is to listen first. Challenge yourself to listen to your bandmates more than you listen to yourself. You'll get better at it the more you practice. And step 2, use repetition. Repetition sends bass into the background more, so other voices can have the foreground. Take Thundercat's line on Silk Sonic's After Last Night with Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak, and Bootsy Collins. Thundercat plays it super simple and plays this riff over and over with almost no fills to keep the listener's attention on the vocals.
Now I don't know what you did when you did what you did. But you did it, girl. See, normally I don't stutter, but you did do it to me.
And repetition actually makes it more impressive when you do play a sick bass fill. Like Thundercat starts ripping out at the end of this song to stand out more and add intensity. And step 3, use repetition. Repetition sends bass. So Thundercat knows how to blend in, but that doesn't mean boring. He manages to make even simple lines have a sense of melody. And how he does that leads us to his other maverick skill, reason number 5. Singing and playing bass at the same time is hard, and that's why so few people do it. It's generally considered to be harder than singing while playing guitar because the rhythms are more complex than just strummy, strummy, strum. And singing one rhythm and playing another is like patting your head and rubbing your stomach times infinity. Not only is Thundercat a sick bass player, he's also a sick lead singer, and Grammy Award-winning lyricist of powerfully poetic lines like, "Cool to be a cat, meow meow, meow meow." Being a singer is actually part of what makes him a standout bass player in 2 ways. 1, he thinks about bass melodically, and this comes from actually singing your ideas rather than just playing based off of finger patterns. Let me try to show you. Here are some bass noodles just based off of thoughtless finger wiggling inside of a scale. It's not terrible, but I'd bet you money you're not gonna be singing it to yourself later today. But if I start the drums and try actually humming an idea to myself, even if it's just internally, and I'll play that. That's much better, right? It's totally different vibe, way more singable and catchy. As even more evidence Thundercat is thinking about bass vocally, sometimes the bass just copies the vocal melody, like this fun little sing-along riff in Captain Stupido. And 2, he uses call and response, a common musical device that's been around probably as long as humans have been making music. There's a strong tradition of blues singer-guitarist combos using this, creating the call with their voice and then the response with the instrument. And there's no better example than B.B. King.
Thrill is gone away.
And here's Thundercat doing the same thing.
Where did it go? Did I leave it in a go?
Singing naturally makes you good at this because it's too hard to play fills while you're also singing. So when you're playing with a singer or any other lead melody instrument, imagine that they're the call and then wait for an appropriate space to give your response. By the way, did you notice the trippy sound of the bass in that last clip? We gotta talk about those crazy tones. A lot of bassists kind of have one sound. Like if you listen to James Jamerson on the Motown stuff, you're gonna hear the sound of his super tubby P bass with labella flat wound strings and the tone knob rolled all the way off. That's the sound. And obviously that's super cool and amazing, but because Thundercat jumps around so many different musical roles, he shapeshifts the sound of his bass a lot. From super muffled and thumpy, to nasal and jocko-y, to what the frick, how is that even a bass? He often shapeshifts using effects pedals, which transform the normal sound of the bass into something less obvious. The use of effects accomplishes 3 things. 1, he can give his bass more of an artificial processed sound, which matches the vibe of the synths and other electronic sounds in his music. 2, effects help him layer his songs with multiple bass tracks, which is normally a huge no-no because they get really clashy and fight each other, but the effects give each layer their own sound. My favorite example of this is Oh Shit It's X from the Apocalypse album, which has at least four bass tracks on it. Just listen. Crazy. This kind of thing just wouldn't work without the distinct tones created by the effects pedals. Here's an awful, muddy recreation of this song with 4 bass tracks with the same bass tone. Don't say I didn't warn you. 3, effects make his bass sound more like a voice. This links back to talking about singing. That signature wow wow sound he gets comes from an envelope filter, which makes the bass sound more like it's talking to you. Funny Thing from It Is What It Is a great example of this. That song just wouldn't bang the same way with plain, clean bass. you've never made the sojourn into effects pedals, the best way to get started is to spend as little money as possible and just try some stuff out. You can start with a cheap multi-effects unit that gives you a bunch of sounds in one box. I didn't own any effects except for my Boss ME50B for like many years when I was younger, and it's still kind of cool. I know a lot of folks on the BassBuzz forum are really into these old Zoom multi-units that are super cheap, and there are tons of free effects plugins for various DAWs. Be warned, if you get into pedals, you may start getting visits from Gas Guy, who will encourage you to endlessly add to your collection until your bank account is fully drained.
You know what you need is just one more pedal. Come on, what can it hurt?
Not every bassist gives you a clear sense of who they are. Most of us just stand shyly in the corner while the singer and lead guitarist take all the glory. I think my favorite thing about Thundercat is he's not shy about expressing himself on bass or in life, which is probably one of the reasons he connects to so many people. But his expression isn't like those American Idol plastic bands where it's all manufactured personality. Thundercat's vibe is authentic, coming from a place of genuine passion. From his name being Thundercat, which is inspired by his love for cartoons, including the Thundercat series, to the way he dresses, showing his love for cats and anime and video games, to his dorky lyrics about playing Diablo.
I'm gonna play Diablo either way.
Thank God I thought it was just me. The fact that this official music video was shot on his phone and it's about girls rejecting him, this authentic expression is part of why other awesome artists recognize his awesomeness. From Flying Lotus to Erykah Badu to Gorillaz. Ariana Grande covered Them Changes and also performed it with Thundercat, with Adult Swim cartoons playing in the background. I mean, this is just dope.
Where did it go? Did I leave it in the cold?
As someone who's been putting out content since 2011, which in internet years is like 1,000 billion years ago, I've done more than my fair share of worrying about how I'm perceived and what do I look like and what's everyone gonna think of the things I make. And I'm sure Thundercat experiences that to some degree too, since he's also a human person, or is he? But I really admire the way he just frickin' goes for it and puts it all out there, like, hey world, here I am, I may be covered in cat.
But I still smell good.
It was like, I don't know, I just have always been my own person. Your music has to be honest, and be honestly who you are.
And he's still trying to improve as a bassist. I practice scales and tunes every day, and I do a lot of writing. I'm always listening with intent. Here's the thing, it's okay to tread the well-trodden path of normal bass playing. We don't all need to be mavericks, and most bassists are getting paid to just lay it down simple. But thank the eye of Thundera that there are wild innovators like Thundercat, who when everyone else is zigging, he zags and inspires us with his own funny thing. Check out my 7 Reasons Fleet is Awesome video for more maverick inspiration. A bassist who carved his own unique path through punk, funk, and nakedness, and is also a huge Thundercat fan.